Animators can't stop traumatizing you, and it should be illegal. Somehow they keep getting away with drawing the most horrifying scenes in kids' movies. Like, do you remember this? Or this? Probably not, because you blocked out the trauma. I saw this when I was 10, and it still comes up in therapy. It's Spooktober, and I just found the most horrifying animated moment of all time. I have no idea how this got approved. Okay, so old Disney movies are filled with scary stuff. Like this, or even this. Well, back in the day, one ex-Disney animator left the studio so he could take things to the next level of messed up. This is Don Bluth. When he started his own studio, he made kids' movies, but they were filled with absolutely terrifying moments for one simple reason.
If you don't give the people something to really be frightened of, then when the salvation moment comes, it's not as sweet.
With that in mind, he created one of the most horrific death scenes in animation history. Okay, watch closely. Homie gets attacked by demons, and his flesh melts. But it's not over yet. Then, his bones squirm in pain before he turns into dust. Gotta love family movies. This is crazy. An animator just revealed the truth behind working on Nightmare Before Christmas, and his story is absolutely mind-blowing. Okay, so real quick, we all know animators are crazy. They work long hours to make stuff like this. But the craziest animators make stop motion, like this guy. So back in the day, he got assigned to animate this scene, and that's when things got weird. So stop motion takes forever to do.
A really good day is about 2 seconds of animation.
But the scene they wanted him to animate was over 5 minutes long. These animators have amazing attention spans, which is proof they don't binge YouTube shorts. He had to lock in. However, there was another huge problem. It was an important scene, so he wanted it to be perfect, but he absolutely could not mess up.
But before, when we're working in film, you have a problem, you have to reshoot your 2-week shot.
The pressure was on. After 6 long months of working on it daily, he finished it all by himself. But that's not it. Later, he was shocked when he discovered a huge secret that no one was telling him.
Didn't tell Anthony during that time. At the end, there was a consideration of cutting out that whole sequence.
Old Disney movies are way creepier than you realize. Even the cutest cartoons have absolutely nightmarish behind-the-scenes art that we aren't supposed to see. It's Spooktober, so here are 3 times animators accidentally created some of the most terrifying art while making classic cartoons. Okay, so back in the day, Disney animators always killed it. Not like that. These dudes could animate anything because Walt Disney demanded they follow one rule.
To caricature the real thing, Walt Disney always said you have to know what the real thing looks like. So before we draw something, if it's an animal, we try to learn what he looks like.
But some animators took that to the next level and ended up creating some really creepy stuff. So for Bambi, animators had to study real animal anatomy, which led to these creepy drawings. And some butts. But it gets freakier. Next, you probably didn't notice, but Gumball has tons of creepy art. This show is hilarious, but low-key, also terrifying. Just look at these designs. The last one is crazy because it comes from Disney Channel. The Owl House is a nice, fun family show. So tell me why the animators did this. This animator panicked when the studio bought his script.
He said, "Where's the rest of the script?" And I was like, "It's at home." And it wasn't.
But his script wasn't actually done. This is the hilarious story of how one guy desperately wrote a Halloween classic.
I was sitting there on the bed in the middle of the night saying, "Come on."
It's Spooktober, and this is Chris Butler, the writer and director of Paranorman. It's an iconic movie now, but did you know it took a long time for it to get made?
I was working on the story for probably, 10, 11 years before we started.
Even after all that time, he only had a couple pages of the script completed. But when Leica Studios wanted to turn it into a movie, he had to lock in.
Travis called me into his office and he said, "I think this should be our next movie." Went back to my office and I was just like, how do I do this?
It was genius. He used old John Hughes and John Carpenter movies as inspiration and mixed it all together with horror movies too. But to make the movie feel authentic to the setting, he did something crazy.
When I was writing it, I stayed in the most haunted hotel in Massachusetts, in the most haunted room.
And the results weren't what you'd expect.
Nothing happened. Ghosts are fickle.
This is every animator's worst nightmare. One insanely picky client was never satisfied.
And he was very critical. Anytime we did something bad, he'd say, "Who did that?"
This animator would constantly get roasted until he finally found a hilariously simple way to respond. So this guy's an animation legend who directed all those Charlie Brown cartoons. Turns out, making them was a huge struggle. First, the producers gave him a strict budget, but the real struggle was dealing with Charles Schulz, the creator of the Peanuts. Now, they were friends, but that did not mean working together was easy. Schulz would criticize the animation team's drawings over and over again.
He started looking at each drawing. That's a terrible drawing.
The deadline was approaching and time was running out, but Melendez couldn't get anything approved, so he found 3 ways to deal with it. First, he'd get sassy.
Well, he says, "That's sure a terrible drawing. I don't like it." Well, I said, "I don't care who did it. Here, I gave him a pencil. You draw it the way it should be in there."
Then he'd get tricky.
He said, "I never draw him in that position. I'll solve that problem. I did just by tracing up his drawings." He never noticed it.
And when that failed, he had a funny backup plan.
Anytime we did something bad, he'd say, "Who did that?" Sometimes I did it. I'd always blame somebody that wasn't around.
This guy made hand-drawn animation in VR, and the results are mind-blowing. It's nuts. Here's how he does it. First, he sketches out the character in VR, and then he animates, just like old-school Disney animators would. He even paints and sculpts the background elements in VR as well. But I was shocked to find out that yeah, it's tons of work, but when compared to making normal CGI animation, the animator discovered that making stuff in VR is surprisingly way faster. Gravity Falls animators struggled. It's simple and hilarious, but this one drawing of a gnome barfing up a rainbow was way more complicated than you realize. So Gravity Falls characters took tons of work to get right, but no one expected this much work to go into one character. His first sketch was rough. Reminds me of how this started like this. Then he was drawn like this for the storyboard, but he wasn't quite right, so the creator of the show drew his version and added the funny eyes. Then a character designer made that drawing look actually good. Then they added color 3 different times. And it's done. Psych, there's more. They made a version for promo materials and added some cool lighting, and even gave him a new arm for the press material. These ex-Disney animators were so unhinged. Their drawing styles were so unique, they ended up leaving the studio. But their behind-the-scenes versions of iconic Disney characters is mind-blowing, and you have to see it. If you look closely while watching animation, you might notice that the characters look a little different sometimes. And that's because behind the scenes, each artist draws a character a little bit differently, like how all these SpongeBobs are actually different. Even Disney animators do it, but in a more subtle way.
Funny, in drawing Ariel, I had a team of animators working with me as well. Everybody drew the shells a little different size.
But it gets crazy because some animators can't help but draw in their own style. First, we have Tim Burton. He worked at Disney and hated it. His style never really fit. They wanted characters that looked like this, or this, or this, but he drew them like this. Next is Chris Sanders. He's an animation legend that created Stitch, Toothless, and whatever her name is. He has a super unique style, so when he was drawing characters for the Disney movies he worked on, it got a little weird. Here's his Scar, and Timon, and Simba. He drew this scene from Mulan like this, and his craziest drawings were from Beauty and the Beast. So here's the final Beast design that we all know and love, and this is the Chris Sanders version. Animators can't keep getting away with this. They've been sneaking the craziest things in movies and you never notice. But I just found out it goes way deeper. Even in kids' movies, animators are hiding the craziest things in plain sight. Take a look at these characters. Turns out a lot of times animators put secret symbols in their designs. Now it can be super basic, like how Pops is based on a lollipop, or more complex, like how Meg is secretly Greek columns and pottery. But the coolest one is actually the most obvious. Dracula's head was a coffin the entire time. Plus, we all know what Peter's chin looks like, but I try to forget that one. I can't believe it. This actor just roasted the entire modern animation industry. He threw some major shade at some of the new cartoons that we all love. But the worst part is, he kinda has a point. So real quick, this is Billy West, a legendary actor who voices some iconic characters.
You're despicable! Bring me a sandwich from the dumpster. Will you shut up?
He's been in the industry for decades and has seen some of the trends come and go. It's crazy. First, animators drew like this, then this, unfortunately. Fast forward, then CGI came, then whatever this was. Now everyone's animating panic attacks for some reason. As you can see, animation is constantly evolving. Some trends are good and some are bad, but the industry has slowly been changing, and maybe you haven't noticed, but this guy has. I'll let him explain.
I come from the old school of Disney, Warner Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
They lived and died by how aesthetic and artistic those portrayals were. There's a trend in animation and characters. The more it looks like children's refrigerator art, the more popular it is. You know, characters with no perspective artistically, it's not the important factor.
These animators absolutely horrified Disney executives when they made a cartoon so twisted that it got banned. This is the crazy story of the horror cartoon Disney doesn't want you to see.
Most people don't even know that short because it's not really shown.
The animators loved it, the executives hated it, and things got intense behind the scenes. Let's go back. It's Spooktober, and Disney is known to be super family friendly, even though they love casually traumatizing kids too. But back in the day, Disney animators went way too far when they worked on a project that starred a freakishly twisted version of Mickey Mouse. Now, there have been some terrifying Mickeys before, but this cartoon took it to the next level. The animation, action, and comedy are truly amazing because in the short, Mickey goes feral. When it was done, the animators were proud of it, but as soon as the Disney execs saw it, things took a turn.
When they saw the finished short, the company, when they saw this, they were a little afraid of it. We argued he's turning into the nice Mickey in the end. It all ends well.
The executives demanded they tone down the violence and the scary stuff, but it gets worse. Even after making those changes, Disney still doesn't promote it, even to this day.
They just didn't feel comfortable promoting this image of Mickey Mouse.
Animators can't stop drawing inappropriate things in kids' shows. Watching cartoons is even more hilarious when you realize it's someone's job to draw stuff like this. But it gets even weirder. You won't believe the absolutely unhinged things animators have been paid to draw. A lot of people don't realize it, but in animation, everything you see on screen had to be planned and drawn. People, animals, buildings, and cars all have to be designed. But the artists who do this have spent years perfecting their craft only to finally get a job and be asked to draw the weirdest stuff. Like if you work on Rick and Morty, you draw a lot of aliens and stuff like this, and this, and this. It's crazy. Someone paid their rent by drawing Pickle Rick. I wonder what goes through someone's head when they're told to draw something like this. But hands down, the most disturbingly hilarious thing an artist has been paid to draw comes from kid shows. Gravity Falls artists had to draw some weird stuff, Gumball artists too. That's nothing compared to what Nickelodeon paid someone to draw. I think it's crazy that someone decided to become an artist, spent countless hours honing their skills, maybe went to art school, to finally get a job at one of the most famous studios in the world, all to end up drawing Pregnant Cosmo. Remember when Finding Nemo was almost a huge disaster? Pixar animators made a huge mistake that almost ruined the movie. Believe it or not, this is how test audience feedback helped them save the movie from being a total flop. Okay, so we all know Nemo is one of the best Pixar movies, and the best part of it is the characters. I mean, who doesn't love Dory?
There's not one speck of judgment in her or meanness.
I mean, even the side characters are memorable. While they were making it, Pixar thought they had a banger, but everything changed when the test audience called it a flop. So it turns out when people saw an early version of the movie, they absolutely hated it. Well, they mostly hated Marlin, Nemo's dad. And of course, people hating the main character was a big problem. And with the deadline approaching, they had to fix it, and fast. Luckily, making one small change took the movie from flop to success.
You never liked Marlin because you never understood why he was so nervous and fearful. That entire beginning of Nemo with the tragic death of the family, that was actually not told up front. It was alluded to, and then the actual tragedy was all explained to you as the fishing net was going up. And my editor convinced me to shove it all to the front, and it changed the movie 100%.
Have you noticed animators can't stop making things jiggle? It's crazy. They are obsessed with making body parts bounce. And low-key, it's super satisfying, but sometimes they take it way too far. You won't believe the crazy things they've added jiggle to. So let's go back. Animators have been adding jiggle to their characters for a long time. You can see it all the way back in Pinocchio and even some of their more recent pencil animation. It's such an important element to making a character feel alive that old-school Disney animators actually made a rule that you kind of had to include it. It's something that's easy to do in 2D, however, when you try to do it in other animation styles, it can cause some problems. Over the years, so many different productions had to invent new technology to create jiggle effects in stop motion and even CGI, but it's getting even more ridiculous. Look, we all appreciate some cheeks bouncing. Muscles too, sure. But check this out, they add jiggle to things you wouldn't expect. Pixar had jiggly bones. That's not even the craziest jiggle I've seen. Adding bounce is so important that animators spent months developing a way to add jiggle to robots. So Pixar animators just revealed new behind-the-scenes images from Inside Out 2, and it's absolutely horrifying. So when you make computer-generated animation, a lot of things can go wrong. One wrong click and a character can go from this to this. Body parts can stretch or even disappear, but the technical difficulties on Inside Out 2 created some terrifying stuff. We all love Riley, but not like this. Her mom had some issues too, and just look at Joy's hair. Every other emotion but anger looks crazy. Okay, Sadness also had some hair trouble. Low-key, I wish I could see her do this.